recording the lecture. Are there any questions from last time or so far anything we have discussed? Okay, if not, then okay, so there is a error that I made last time during the lecture. I mentioned that this number 2 here was the genus. I wrote genus of the plane. That's not true actually. It's called the Euler characteristic of the plane. And the Euler characteristic is related to the genus by the following formula. Let me see if I have some space here. This is not part of the syllabus, right? I mean, this is topology, but I just want to correct what I said. So the Euler characteristic of a surface, to be very precise, I should say closed orientable surface, but I'm not going to define these terms. This is topology stuff. Is equal to 2 minus 2 times the genus of the surface. And the genus of the plane is actually 0. And so if you put it in this formula, you get that the Euler characteristic of the plane is 2. Okay, so it was supposed to be Euler characteristic and not the genus. But since we are not going to go into these topics of topology, it doesn't really matter. I just didn't want to make a false statement in the lecture. Okay, good. All right, so I mentioned at the end of the last lecture that we will discuss this corollary of Euler's formula today. We will prove it, that the number of edges is linear in the number of vertices. In particular, it is less than equal to 3 times the number of vertices minus 6 for any planar connected graph with at least 3 vertices. So why do we need this? Can anybody give me a counter example? Well, the counter example has to be 2 or less vertices, right? So what about K2? Does this satisfy this formula? According to this formula, 1 is less than equal to 3 times 2 minus 6. Right? So there are graphs which are too small where this formula is not going to hold. But we are going to prove that for all bigger graphs, 3 or more vertices, this is going to be true. Okay? So how do we go about proving this? Well, proof of corollary. So G is a simple planar connected graph, right? Number of vertices are at least 3. And we want to prove that the number of edges is less than equal to 3 times the number of vertices minus 6. Okay? So we are going to use, we are going to use Euler's formula. So what are the tools we have? The tools we have, the first one is Euler's formula. But remember, to use Euler's formula, we should fix a planar embedding, right? Because we are talking about the number of faces. I mean, actually, we don't need to fix a planar embedding. But what Euler's formula says is that for any planar embedding, G tilde, the number of faces is exactly equal to the number of edges minus the number of vertices plus 2. Right? Notice that I did not put a tilde on the right hand side. Right? Of course, because it's doesn't matter what planar embedding you're looking at. So this is our first tool, but we are going to need a second tool to prove this result. Okay? And what is that tool? Let's go to the boundary of a planar graph. Okay. Do you all remember this example? So, what is the boundary of F1? What is the length of F1?
Four.
F1. You want to think about it again? You start here, you go here, and then you go here. So what is the length?
Oh, sorry. 3.
3. Thank you. Okay. Can anyone else tell me what length of F3 is?
5.
5. What about F2? What is the length of F2? Remember, the boundary is a closed walk. It is the closed walk that represents that face, that is bounding that face. So can someone tell me what is the length of F2?
9.
9. Let's see. You go from 1 to 2. Okay, I've written the boundary here. So how many edges are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it looks like 10 to me. So why is it that someone thinks it's 9 and someone else thinks it's 10? What is the reason that we have?
I made a counting.
Sorry?
I made a counting error, that's all. Sorry.
Oh, but no, there is also a reason, right? I mean, there is a reason behind the counting error. There is a...
I think we are counting 2, 4 and 4, 2 twice.
Exactly. We are counting a certain edge twice. So it is natural to think that it could be 9. But because it is a closed walk, we are going to count multiple times depending on how many times the edge occurs in that closed walk, right? So the length is actually going to be 10. Okay? Okay, so we got 3, 5, and 10. I want to ask you, if I take the sum of these lengths, what is another way to think about this sum? Can anybody tell me? What's going on? Can you relate this to something else in the graph? What is this number 18? Can you relate
twice
18?
the number of edges?
Twice the number of edges, exactly. So we are going to use this fact that the sum of the lengths of the faces is going to be twice the number of edges, because any edge which belongs to a cycle, it will be counted in two faces, one face here and one face here. And any edge that does not belong to a cycle is a cut edge, and that will be counted in exactly one face 2 times. If this face is equal to this face. Okay, so there are 2 types of edges. Remember, you either have a cut edge or the edge belongs to a cycle. These are the 2 possible cases if you go back to connectivity module. So if the edge belongs to a cycle, then it will belong to 2 different faces, the inside and the outside. Okay, we are relying a little bit on intuition and not making everything super rigorous, right? And if the edge is not in a cycle, then it is a cut edge. And then notice that the face on this side is the same as the face on that side, because you can connect by an arc. And so if you can connect by an arc, that means that it must be the same face, right? Because faces are arc-wise connected and any 2 faces are disjoint. So every cut edge belongs to one face, but it is counted twice in the boundary. And all other edges are counted once for each face they belong to. And they belong to 2 different faces. So that is a proof of the sum of the length of the faces is equal to twice the number of edges of the graph. Okay, so that is our second tool. The sum of the lengths of the faces is equal to twice the number of edges of the graph. Okay. What does this remind you of? Is anybody reminded of some other result in graph theory when you look at this? Is there any basic result in graph theory that we did not cover in this course?
Sum of degrees.
Yes, the handshaking lemma. The handshaking lemma. It is reminiscent of the handshaking lemma, which says that if you sum up the degrees of the vertices, then you get twice the number of edges of the graph. Right? Good. There is a reason behind this. It is not a coincidence. The reason behind this, there is a deeper reason. It is called planar duality. And we will discuss this if time permits on Wednesday. But it is not, I mean, it may or may not be part of the syllabus of the course. But in any case, it is a peripheral part of the syllabus. So we may discuss this on Wednesday, 30th September. Okay, so there is a duality between faces and vertices in planar graphs, and that duality is called planar duality. Okay, but for now, let's not worry about it. Let's come back to our point. So we have now two tools, Euler's formula and the dual of the handshaking lemma. I will just call this the dual of the handshaking lemma. Okay. I want you all to think about this for a few minutes, and I want you to try to prove that this is true because of these two facts, the first fact and the second fact. There is a third small fact that you will require. Maybe I should discuss this. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and see if anybody can come up with a quick proof. Otherwise, I'll give you one more fact to use. Okay? Can anybody see how you can use these two facts to prove that the number of edges is less than equal to 3 times the number of vertices minus 6? You also need to use the fact that the number of vertices in the graph is at least 3. So how are you going to use this fact? If anybody has any thoughts, you can write in the chat box, and I will call out your name. We can discuss it. Or you can just start speaking, because I think, yeah, you can just turn on your mic and tell me what to do. Okay, well, if not, let us consider one more fact. There is a third observation that we are going to use. If my number of vertices is at least at least 3, if the number of vertices is at least 3, then what is the minimum length of a face? Remember, the graph is also simple. What is the minimum length of a face? Anyone? Ritvik, Anand, both of you are saying 3. Okay, Anand, can you explain why?
No matter how you put it, you will always have a cycle containing 3 vertices. So it will always have 3 vertices on a face.
Right. So if a face is bounded by a cycle, then it is clear. The boundary is at least 3. The only other possibility is that the face may not be bounded by a cycle, right? It could be like the previous example we had. Then we need a slightly more explanation, right? But even this is not too difficult. Do you see why? Supposing you're looking at some face. Okay, I'll just complete the argument. Ritvik, do you want to explain?
The largest face will have this which is a what do you call it? Cut edge, and in that case it will contain the perimeter of both the cycles, which have to be at least 3.
Right. So if you look at this example, it's clear that you will have to contain the perimeter of this cycle and the perimeter of this cycle. But okay, so that kind of explains in this example. Let's just do a slight more argument, and we don't even need to talk about cycles. So we have a closed walk, right? So what is the length? What is the boundary of a face? We know that the boundary, I mean, we kind of assumed in the definition, boundary of a face is a closed walk. Do you agree? So if you start at some edge, right, the closed walk is going to contain at least one edge because our graph is a connected simple graph. So there is going, and it's not the empty graph, right? So you have at least one edge. So you take that edge in the boundary. If the length is exactly 2, then the only possible way is for you to come back to this vertex by a single edge, and that is only possible if your graph is K2. If your graph is not K2, then this is one edge in the face. Then there will be at least another edge either at this vertex or at this vertex because the graph is not K2. And so then as soon as you traverse these 2 edges, your length is already 2. And now to get back to the original vertex, because it is a closed walk, you need at least 1/3 edge. So whether it is a cycle or any closed walk, you are going to need at least 3 edges to come back to the original vertex, right? So you only need the fact that the graph has at least 2 edges, and the 2 edges are not parallel edges, right? Because in this case, the length of the face is 2, but our graph is simple, so this can't happen. So we need just the fact that the graph has at least 2 edges, and that is true because the graph has at least 3 vertices, right? So any face is going to have this structure on the boundary, and that means that the length has to be at least 3, whether it is a cycle or any other closed walk. Does that make sense? But we are not going to write a rigorous proof of this. If you want to, you can convert this argument into a more rigorous proof. We are using some assumptions which we did not prove rigorously again, that the boundary of a face is a closed walk, right? So there are some things which we are allowing ourselves to rely on intuition, right? So now we have these 3 facts, that the minimum length of any face is at least 3, is 3. We have this fact, the dual of the handshaking lemma, and we have Euler's formula. Can you use all these facts to prove the given formula?
The sum of the lengths of each face is at least 3 times the number of faces.
Okay. So let me start writing what you're saying. Are you saying the following? So I can put 3 times. Okay, give me a second. 3 times the number of faces is less than equal to 2 times the number of edges.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? So what Anand is saying is, because the length of each face is at least 3, if you put 3 everywhere for each face, then that is going to be a lower bound on the number of 2 times the number of edges. 3 times the number of faces is less than equal to 2 times the number of edges, right? Because for each face, you're taking 3 as the lower bound. So it is going to be either 3 or it is going to be some number bigger than 3. So if you just assume everything is 3, you will get a lower bound on the right hand side. Okay, is everybody convinced? I should put a tilde. Okay, so this is the first observation, combining points 2 and 3. What about Euler's formula? Let's multiply everything by 3. So 3 times the number of faces is equal to 3 times the number of edges minus 3 times the number of vertices plus 6. Okay, now what shall we do? What shall we do?
Substitute. Just substitute 2 and 1.
Okay, so what should I substitute? I should substitute this by this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this implies, remember, we don't want to get faces, right? Euler's formula, the bound we are trying to prove relates the number of edges to the number of vertices. So we want to throw away the number of faces, right? So 2 times the number of edges of the graph is greater than equal to 3 times the number of edges of the graph minus 3 times the number of vertices of the graph plus 6. Right? And now if you do everything, if you do the arithmetic, you get exactly the bound you want. Is that right? Did I make any mistakes? No? Good. So is everybody with me? Did you see what happened? Right? We used, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Shefali.
Yeah. So the point where we are combining both 2 and 3 points. So how it is done? Can you please explain that again?
Yes, yes. So look at this formula here, right? Look at this part here. Okay? We know that the length of each face is at least 3, right? So for each face, supposing the graph has 3 faces with lengths 3, 5, and 7, what we are assuming is that, well, suppose they have all length 3. So 3 plus 3 plus 3, 9. That is less than equal to 3 plus 5 plus 7, right? Because for each number, we are assuming that we know that 3 is a lower bound, right? So what we are saying is that this quantity, this left-hand side, is greater than equal to 3 times the number of faces. And because the left-hand side is greater than equal to 3 times the number of faces, the right-hand side is also greater than equal to 3 times the number of faces. Remember, each face has length at least 3. So if I just assume that they are all 3, I will get a lower bound on the sum of the lengths. Because each one is at least 3. So if I just add up 3 for each face, that will be less than equal to the sum of the lengths of the faces. Do you see that?
So yeah, again, I didn't get it.
Supposing your graph is 10 faces. Supposing your graph is 2 faces. Okay, let's just work with 2 faces. Let's say you sum up the lengths of their faces, right? You know that the length of each face is at least 3. Then I claim that the total sum of the length has to be at least 6. Do you agree? I know that the length of each face is at least 3. My graph is exactly 2 faces. Then I claim that the sum of the lengths of those 2 faces is at least 6. Do you agree?
Yes.
Exactly. Now generalize it from 2 faces to k faces. if you add up a bunch of numbers, each number is at least k, then k times the number of numbers you're adding is a lower bound on the sum of the numbers,
Okay. Okay.
right? Does that make sense?
Basically, we are adding a lower bound for this.
Yeah, we are just assuming, we are just putting 3 as a lower bound for each phase, which we know is true because we just discussed that, right?
Yeah.
Let me explain it a slightly different way. Supposing you add a bunch of numbers n1 up to n p, you know that each number ni is at least 3. Then this sum is bounded by 3 times, lower bounded by 3 times p.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that is exactly what we did. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So the gist of this is that for planarity, order m is order n. Okay. For our decision problem, well, let me just say for planarity. Most problems in planarity, you don't need multiple edges. They don't add anything to the problem. Okay. Good. So now we are going to start working towards an algorithm for the decision problem. Planarity testing. So this is generally called planarity testing in the literature. So our main decision problem of module 2. Okay. This is our next goal for the next 2 or 3 lectures, including today. Okay. Are there any questions before we embark on this fascinating journey? No questions, no discussions? Is everybody on the same page, more or less?
Yes.
Thank you. So let us see how much time we have. Good, we have some 18 minutes to go. Let's try to get to the main point. I would like to try to deliver the main intuition behind the algorithm we are going to discuss. Okay. All right. So the main concept behind this algorithm is called bridges of a cycle. The algorithm that we are going to discuss, we won't get to it today. We might get to it by the next lecture. Bridges of a cycle. As you can see, in planarity, cycles are really important. Okay. And one of the key reasons behind that is the Jordan curve theorem. A closed curve is nothing but a cycle. Okay. Good. So let's see how do I want to go about this. Okay. So you see, whenever you are given a connected, so our input for this decision problem is a simple connected graph. Actually, before I go to this, I want to discuss one more important point. So why are we assuming connected? Can anybody quickly tell me why we are assuming connected? What is the reason to assume that the graph is connected?
We can apply the same algorithm for each connected component.
Right, we can apply the same algorithm for each connected component. So the reason is, to put it differently, to put it slightly differently, the reason is a graph is connected, a graph is planar if and only if each connected component is planar. Does everybody see this, or does this need any explanation? If any component is non-planar, then the whole graph is non-planar. If the graph is planar, then each component has to be planar. Or if the graph is non-planar, then there is at least one component that is non-planar. Right? All of these statements seem believable, right? You can write down a proof if necessary. But we are also going to assume that the graph is too connected. We are actually going to assume that our graph is too connected. Can anybody tell me why we can assume that the graph is too connected? Well, what does it mean? Supposing there is a cut vertex in the graph, right? This is a cut vertex, which means when I delete this vertex, I get a bunch of components. Right? And there are edges going into each of these components. Okay? I would like to claim that this graph is planar if and only if each block, remember these are the blocks, actually these are not blocks. For getting the blocks, you have to consider all the cut vertices. So I would like to prove something like this. So these are the components after deleting the vertex V. And this is the graph G. So the claim is that G is planar if and only if G1, G2, actually,
G1 plus V.
yeah, thanks. G1 union V, G2 union V, G3 union V, and G4 union V. So technically, what I mean by this, I'm being a bit sloppy in notation. Sorry. V and all edges connecting V to the vertices of G1. Okay. I can make it more rigorous, but I'm just going to leave it. Okay. So I'm saying that you take this graph with the edges joining vertex V. You take this second graph with the edges joining V. And all of these graphs, if they are all planar, then the whole graph will be planar. They are all planar. Does everybody believe this? What is the reason behind this? Supposing G1 plus V is planar and G2 plus V is planar, right? I claim that using these two, you can combine these two embeddings to get the whole G1, G2, and V as a planar embedding. Why is that the case? Let's take a quick example. I think an example is going to be more helpful to then understand what is the more general thing going on. Right? So in this case, what you would do is, I'm just taking G1 and G2. I would get a planar embedding of G1 plus V. I'd get a planar embedding of G2 plus V. Okay. And now I can, in this drawing, it is very clear that I can just combine them, right? You might say, well, why are they in the same face? What if V is inside here? Of course, we can flip it in this drawing, but in general, if V is somewhere else, then how would you deal with it? Can anybody tell me how to deal with this case? I don't want to chain the embedding. Can I still somehow accommodate the idea?
Yeah, we can place this entire G2 plus V within the cycle.
Exactly. You just put this whole thing inside this area, this region, this face. You make the face bigger, right? I mean, you make the face big enough, or you make the graph small enough, whatever, and you fit it in that face. Okay? So the point is that the cut vertex belongs to some face in the first embedding. You basically make that face, you kind of expand it, and you put the other graph in the same point with that cut vertex in that position. Right? Another way to think about it is every face can be made the outer face. You remember this example we studied. Let me go back to a previous example in the last lecture. Remember this drawing. I redrew this to make a certain face the unbounded face, the outside face. So what you can always do, this is using the fact that embedding on the plane is the same as embedding on the sphere. So there is nothing special about the outer face. There is no such thing as the outer face. Okay, it is really sort of an illusion. You just put it on a sphere, and then they are all kind of the same. So you can always put the vertex V, the cut vertex, on the outer face. And if you put it on the outer face for both the embeddings, then you can just combine the two embeddings as we did in this case, in the previous case where so maybe that is actually an easier way to see it. For each of the embeddings, you just put the vertex V on the outer face, right? And then you just combine them, because if they are both on the outer face, then it is very clear that you can combine them, right? And any vertex can be placed on the outer face, because any face can be the outer face. Okay, so that is the intuitive explanation behind this. Is everybody convinced?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So we are actually going to assume that our graphs are two connected. A simple two connected graph, a simple connected graph is planar if and only if each block, remember blocks? And so we are going to assume that our graphs are two connected. Okay? And the discussion for that is here. Good. So since our graphs are two connected, there is always going to be a cycle in the graph. G has a cycle. Okay. So let's take any cycle of the graph. Let C be any cycle. If C is any cycle, then in any planar embedding, of G, if such an embedding exists, because we don't know if the graph is planar, right? That is what we want to decide. C corresponds to a closed curve, to a simple closed curve, and I will just use the same notation, C. Okay? Just to avoid too much notation and too much clutter in our notes. Okay? All right. So now the point is, this cycle has to be a closed curve in the plane. And in some sense, how you draw the closed curve doesn't really matter. That is sort of another way of thinking about the Jordan curve theorem. No matter how you put a closed curve, it is going to divide the plane into the inside and the outside. And essentially, it doesn't matter how the curve is drawn, right? Good. So now the question is, you can embed clearly if it is just a cycle. If your graph is just a cycle, then it is planar, right? The question is, what about the other things in the graph? So you fixed one cycle, but now the graph may have other things, right? So can you somehow think about those pieces of the graph with respect to this cycle? I am going to make all this very clear in a few minutes or in the next lecture. What we are going to do is, we are going to think of the whole graph from the point of view of this particular cycle. It is any cycle of the graph, okay? And we will see how, using those smaller pieces of the graph, we can think about planarity of the whole graph, okay? That is the idea we are going towards. So we want to fix a cycle, and now we want to think about the rest of the graph from the point of view of this particular cycle. Okay, good. Okay, so now I want to do a quick example. I'm going to make a drawing of the Peterson graph. Let's see, here is a drawing of the Peterson graph, one of my favorite graphs. Well, one of every graph theorist's favorite graphs. This is a 9 cycle, is that correct? I'm going to make a drawing of the Peterson graph to explain the next concept that we are going to discuss. Let's see. And I'm going to use a bunch of colors to make it intuitive. Okay, can everybody see this drawing?
Yes.
Good. So this is the beautiful Peterson graph. It doesn't really matter which graph it is, but I just like to draw the Peterson graph. Okay, and the cycle we are considering is this outer cycle C. Okay? Okay, I think I need to make this smaller. Okay. What I want to do now in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to be super informal and define things using scissors and a 3D model of a graph, okay? So think of your graph, this graph that I've drawn, if you like, think of your graph as being made of string, okay? So every edge is a string and any vertex is like a bead, okay? So each vertex is a bead and each edge is like a piece of string. Okay? So think of it like some kind of fancy necklace. Okay? If I were to have a necklace, I would definitely choose the Peterson graph. Okay, it is a necklace with beads and strings. Okay? What I want you to do, I want you to tell me how you can cut out this cycle. So I want you to cut the cycle, this cycle C, from the rest of the necklace. So we are going to destroy the necklace, unfortunately, by using a scissor. Okay, so you want to use a scissor and cut out this cycle C from the rest of the necklace. How exactly would you do that? Could someone tell me by looking at these colors, and maybe let me number the vertices: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is 9 vertices and number 9. Okay, so there are 10 vertices, 0 to 9. I want to cut out this cycle from the necklace, which is made of beads and strings, using a scissors. Where exactly would I cut? Where exactly would I put the scissor cuts? Can someone explain to me? To cut out the cycle C from the rest of the necklace. Can someone tell me by looking at the drawing where exactly we are going to put these scissor cuts? I know this is super informal, but there is a reason I'm doing it this way. Okay, because I want to deliver the intuition and not just go into formalism. Okay? Can anyone tell me where should I put the scissor cuts? We have already exceeded the time, so I'm going to go over all colored edges. Anand, can you tell me where on the red colored edges I should put a cut?
Just the ones connecting it to the periphery of the cycle.
Okay, so I will put one cut here, I will put another cut here, and I will put another cut here. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right? We are dealing with graph theory as if it is some kind of I don't know, craft work or electrical network or something, right? We are not going into graph theory formalism. So we are going to put scissor cuts in these 3 places. Where else should I put scissor cuts? Can you tell me? Or can someone else tell me? Are these the only cuts, or should I put more cuts?
Yeah, I think same for all the colored edges.
All for all the colored edges. So here, 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 and here. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Good. So this is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to take a scissor and put cuts in all these places so that the cycle detaches from the rest of the graph. Okay? And now these pieces, so there are 4 pieces apart from the cycle. There is an orange piece, there is a red piece, there is a green piece, and there is a blue piece. Okay? The red one is a more complicated piece. It has 3 edges and 1 vertex. The blue piece, the orange piece, and the green piece, these are these look like 3 edges of the graph. These are going to be the bridges of our cycle. Okay? So our cycle here has 4 bridges: red, blue, orange, and green. Okay? And using this concept, we are going to proceed towards an algorithm for planarity, and we will continue from here tomorrow. Any questions? The lecture is officially over, but you can stay back and ask questions, please. Okay, so those are the 4 bridges of our cycle. And we will continue the discussion from here tomorrow, but I'm still here for another 10 minutes. So we can discuss either the cycle bridges or whatever else you like.
So we're essentially looking at the components we get after removing the all the edges and vertices of the cycle, but we're allowing like hanging edges.
Right. So in this intuitive way of looking at things, we are allowing hanging edges without vertices. But because we want to make things rigorous, we are in the definition, we are not going to allow that, right? Because we don't want to complicate the definition of a graph and stuff. So we are going to make it rigorous so that we don't have any hanging edges.
Okay, sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thanks. Amit is asking that he is not able to access the assignment LaTeX template in Moodle. Is it uploaded? Yes, it is uploaded. Is anybody else not able to access, or is anybody able to access? Could you please say what's happening in your case? Has anybody else tried to access the LaTeX file? The .tex file? Anand is able to access. Can you explain how you are able to access? Amit is a new student. If you could just go through the steps.
You just have to download it. It is a LaTeX file. You can download it. Like the link is working.
Okay, so you click on the assignment, which is on the main Moodle page, I think. And then once you click on the assignment, it will take you to another page, which has both the PDF file and the LaTeX file. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there you can access it. Okay. Amit seems to be able to access it. Oh, thanks, Govind, for sharing the link. Thank you, Anand.
Sir, I have a question regarding the
Yes.
assignment.
Yes.
So, what is exactly meant by a separating cycle?
Oh, we haven't discussed it yet. So problems 2, 3, and 4, you may not be able to attempt immediately, but I'm hoping that maybe by tomorrow or definitely by end of Wednesday's lecture, you will be able to attempt it. But I can already tell you the definition. I did not define bridges formally in this lecture, but you got the intuitive definition of a bridge. And a separating cycle is a cycle which has at least 2 bridges. Does that make sense? So for example, just to give you a quick example, but I have not formally defined bridges. If this is your graph, K4, maybe not this, sorry. I meant this other drawing. So C is your cycle, and I put one vertex inside. So this is not a separating cycle because it has only one bridge. But in the case of the Peterson graph, the cycle we drew has 4 bridges. So this is a separating cycle, whereas this one is not a separating cycle.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I will write the formal definition of a bridge in the next lecture. So then you will have a rigorous definition.
Okay.
Thanks. Any other questions?
So regarding collaborators that you
Yes.
said, like
Yes,
I am auditing the course, so
that's right.
like you said, I have to collaborate with people who are auditing, right? So
That's right.
can you like give me a list of people I can collaborate with, or
Sure. So if you are auditing, yes, I'm going to, okay. So I will also, so for any, I will send an email also for the auditing students who are willing to submit the assignment 1, and I will try to help you finding collaborators. I just did not prioritize you, but now that there is an explicit request, I am going to do it. Thanks.
okay. Yeah, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. So I think now I can switch off the recording.